You are becoming sleepy.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It's almost bedtime. Should probably turn the TV off in a bit.
You are thinking how warm and inviting your bed is.
Well, it's not warm yet. I haven't turned the electric blanket on. Could you do that, actually, Walt? I'm going to make us a hot chocolate. That'd be nice.
We are out of hot chocolate.
Ah, we are too. I could use Milo. It's just not the same, is it?
Working?
What was that?
Nothing. I mean, your eyelids are almost closing.
Wait, where did you get a crystal ball? How is it glowing?
I summoned it from another dimension, a dimension of darkness and dreams, which you are about to enter.
It's the headlight from my car again, isn't it? God, Walt, I've been pulled over about 6 times now, and I can only say it's been stolen by hoodlums so many times.
I am not a hoodlum.
I know you're not a Wait a minute. You're trying to hypnotize me again.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. You do not have powers.
I don't have powers that you understand.
No, you just don't have powers because powers don't exist.
Oh, really? Then where are your pants?
Okay, maybe you have one power. I don't have any pants on, but that's because I don't have any pants left, which is only because you don't do the washing. That's your bloody power.
I did washing yesterday.
Washing my car so you can steal my headlight doesn't count. Why am I imagining like you know those scenes in movies where like a group of characters need to get a fundraiser and they always put together a car wash and they're always doing it in like booty shorts with the classic yellow big sponges.
Look, if I had to distract you, I'd definitely put some booty shorts on.
And one of the like tight crop top, the whole thing, yeah. Fan art. That's what I want commissioned.
Oh, God. Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast. It's the GCP brought to you by POG, Palms Off Gaming, sponsor of this podcast, where the Mind Palace is full of old newspapers and magazines. God, throw these away. It's a mess up here. I'm your host, Walt.
You doing all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yep.
Hello, Commander Players. I'm the guy that never says when you're grating cheese onto my pasta dish. I just never say it. James is my name, by the way. I love
a whole block of cheese. A whole block of cheese is what you are.
At an Italian restaurant, like maybe a month ago now, but they had one of these like graters where they have like this little crank handle, like one of the.
Oh yeah.
And they were like, "Say when," and the guy's eyes just slowly widened as I was. The reason I said that was because I loved the look of this waiter's face, just like. Oh God! I said, did he hear me say when? No, he didn't hear me. Does he expect me to just stop? And then I was like, thank you. And he's like, that is a mountain of Parmesan.
How much cheese has to come out of this machine before we're making a loss as a restaurant?
I will bankrupt restaurants in Melbourne.
No tips tonight for that waiter. Look.
I feel bad now.
Yeah. Before we get to the transmission, we make short form content on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube.
Yeah, we've kind of always said go follow us on, short places like Instagram and TikTok and that. But we have really ramped up our game, haven't we?
Yeah, there's been highlights have come out a bunch recently. Obviously, the highlights from Command Fest are a big thing. For all of you, a few days ago now, I've uploaded a couple of goofy little skits of me around the house.
Really liked the board wipe one. I felt that viscerally. Like I was like, that last line where you go like, oh shit. Yeah. I was like, I have been in game stores where I've had to hold back wanting to reach over and slap someone for casting the 4th board wipe in a game.
It's I say what we're all thinking, like in the skit when I said, you're getting sleepy. I don't know. Anyway.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
We're recording this out of our usual cycle because I had to go away for work. This is on a weeknight, which is very weird for us. But,
and I've been unwell, so I've been probably at home for too long.
Also just on like many painkillers.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, look, you're definitely going to want to follow us. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts if that's your thing. Don't want to spoil anything, but you definitely want to be following us on one of those platforms for the month of September.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to hold back. But yeah, September's going to be great if you like Walt and James in short, little doses, because that's all you can handle. That's fair enough. But on short form platforms, you're going to get a whole lot of short form content.
If you only like us in short form areas, you probably already left this podcast.
Yeah, if you like us in short form, we've been talking for we've not even gotten to the episode topic, and it's been 5 minutes. We should probably do that.
Yeah, we should do that. Let's definitely be not short form. We have an incoming transmission from the deep depths of the galaxy from the Space Commanders. It's time to get commanded.
Cognitive distortions can prevent Commander players from recalling the game as it truly occurred. With time, distortions must be challenged, so players can search for the positives and replace absolutes.
Cognitive distortions. Are we doing actual psychology now? Like we're in a psychology class.
We're doing therapy. This is the therapy episode.
Straight up therapy.
We've come close to it a few times. We've talked about our weaknesses. We've talked about, getting tilted was an episode.
That was an episode.
Yes.
That I had to hold back in some sections of that episode. But this one sounds like we're going to have to really face some hard truths. And we're going to use ourselves as examples here.
Oh, big time.
I hope you guys like this, listeners out there. We're putting our souls out here for you and like admitting our own cognitive distortions in life, in Commander. But I guess cognitive distortions is a big fancy word and not everyone has gone to therapy.
Sure, we should probably clarify that.
Probably define that.
Sure. I did actually open this command a bit in advance.
At least we're prepared.
Yes, it's true.
One of us is prepared.
Someone had to be. And I did do a bit of reading on cognitive distortions. It is something that's come up in therapy for me before, but it's something that I also wanted to remember all of the things about.
It's come up for me too.
Cool.
I think this is a common thing.
It's a common thing that happens to people, I think, and so it's good to understand them. So yeah, cognitive distortions are basically negative thinking patterns that are typically disconnected from logic. So in isolation, this wouldn't be too much of an issue, but the brain learns through repetition, as we know. So when we use these negative thinking patterns over and over again, they can become our default modes of approaching problems. So this can become a real issue when, by definition, these thought patterns are distortions of our reality.
Yeah, changing them completely.
Yeah, so we can end up basically reinforcing thoughts and ideas that fundamentally are not the truth. And are not as things that really are.
I mean, this goes to some extreme lengths. Like some people have, maybe we should put a trigger warning on the top of this podcast episode just for, we might touch on some pretty real topics in our personal lives. We haven't really planned those kind of topics, but we may touch on them. But, just as a general thing, this episode might be cutting deep for some of you, maybe touching home base. But, this can be really extreme in some cases in real life for people. Some people might look in the mirror and see something completely different to what's actually being reflected of who they are. They might look at themselves in the mirror and see someone else. It can be as extreme as that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's extreme as, in your workplace, you go, oh, I'm bad at my job, when realistically you're not. You're doing really well.
You made one small mistake, but in your head, because of a few of these negative thinking patterns, that becomes I am a failure. Sometimes is an entire sentence that is connected to I made this one mistake. But yes, for some of us, that's a whole thing. Look, there's about 15 cognitive distortions that get regularly talked about.
Did you study psychology in uni?
I did one unit. I did one unit of psychology, and I did it in VCE as well. And it was a similar content, but with obviously in more depth at uni as well. Yeah, I chose as an elective to study psychology.
You just opted in to study this stuff.
Look, I enrolled in a Bachelor of Arts because I had no idea what I wanted to study, and I was like,
I'll
work it out.
As does everyone that enrolls in a Bachelor of Arts.
Straight up. My major was creative arts, and I just did all the theatre subjects in the end, and that's how it all began. But
Fair enough.
15 of them altogether that get talked about. We're going to focus on 4 Because I think these 4 are the ones that come up most often in Commander.
Sure, I'm happy to contribute to 4. At least that means we won't be here for 6 hours.
Yes. So we're going to talk about what they are. We're going to talk about some of the ways that you can address this yourself. Hint, hint, the Space Commanders have given us a lot of what we need already. But really importantly, me and James are not therapists.
No.
If anything that we say today brings up uncomfortable feelings or thoughts in you, I'll make it sure that the top resource at the bottom of the show notes, where it has all of the resources that we use in the episode, the top resource there will be a way for you to find someone near you who you can talk to.
Yeah, and I think we can also say at the very start of this episode, therapy is a good thing.
Yes.
You should not be ashamed or embarrassed to go there. Walt can attest to me personally. I used to be very resistant to going to therapy. I carried a lot of shame around it. And thanks to Walt and my partner and lots of other lovely friends and family, going to therapy is part of my weekly routine now. And I'm very happy to say that is making a positive change in cognitive distortions and how I approach problems and all this kind of stuff.
I think
it's really important.
Especially for our Australian listeners, we are unbelievably lucky that you can go to a GP and get a mental health care plan, and you get 10, if you get the extension as well, 10 theoretically free sessions of therapy per year.
And that's, it refreshes every year. So it's not like you use this once and then it's gone.
No.
If you want to spread out 10 therapy sessions, like maybe once every month and a bit through the year, that's a really healthy rate of doing it.
Which is roughly where I've ended up. So I used to go a lot more frequently, weekly at one point, bi-weekly for a long time. I go about once every month or month and a bit now. And so, I use roughly my 10 appointments across a whole year.
I'm in weekly at the moment. How do you think I'm going?
Maybe this episode is for you, James.
Honestly, maybe the Space Commanders have been like tracking my movements and seeing me go to one office in Heidelberg every now and then. There you go. But yes, I think it's a good thing. And like before we dive into it, I think it's really important that you listeners out there realize that this episode might come close to home base.
Yeah.
And if it does, have a think and really reflect and get help if you need it.
Yeah. And yes, absolutely. Me and James unanimously think that's a great idea for you to do it, regardless of where you're at in your life. It's a good idea.
But don't listen to this episode thinking it'll solve all your problems.
No, we're not going to do that.
That's not what we're doing here.
We're a Commander podcast. We're going to talk about Commander things.
Yeah, Magic the Gathering. Let's do it. Okay,
it.
What was the first distortion that you had for us?
So the first distortion that I think comes up in Commander reasonably frequently, it's kind of got a dual side of it. It's called magnification/minimization.
Yeah, I've had this before.
Yes. Yep. So magnifying is usually like placing overemphasis on a mistake in the context of things going well in general.
Yeah, or doing normally. Like just life as normal is progressing, but one bad thing, you go, oh, I'm going to zoom in on that thing.
So you're basically magnifying this mistake and to make it larger than probably it really is in the context of the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Minimization is actually not in relation to mistakes. Again, most of these are negative thinking patterns. So minimization actually tends to be people reducing the importance of achievements. And again, this is in the context of like, a lot of these often go hand in hand, where it's like someone can have these ups and downs in their life, things that are mistakes, things that are achievements. And when you ask them about it, their way that they sort of describe it is they over-exaggerate the size of their mistakes and minimize the size of their achievements.
Yeah.
To make it seem as though their life, they're not making it seem a particular way. They may genuinely believe that their life is more negative than positive, when someone on the outside who's described all those things to them would go, oh, it actually seems like you're going really well right now.
I mean, you can imagine this in the context, let's make up a scenario, a marathon runner, 42 kilometers to run. That's a long bloody way.
Yeah.
And let's say in kilometer 15, they did like a slightly lower pace. And then their overall result was maybe just slightly below what is usually. But let's say that in the last 3 kilometers, which let's say that's their usual struggle town, they have run the fastest last 3 kilometers of their life ever. This person that is having this cognitive distortion of magnifying and minimization will say, oh, that kilometer 15 where I was really slow, that was terrible. I really sucked in that kilometer. And then people will be like, but your last 3K, you smashed. And they'll be like, yeah, but I must have had energy left or something. Or and they really diminish it.
Yeah, minimize that thing. And like it can look quite, it can look quite strange on the outside to have someone like, let's say that marathon runner won that race.
Yeah.
To interview someone after they've won a race and for them to go, I really stuffed up my 15th kilometer would be like, but you won.
Yeah,
you
dude,
know?
you got to the end. You just ran a friggin' marathon.
Yeah,
Like-
so this is the kind of thing that happens in this. It's a distortion, right? It's
Yeah.
a distortion of reality.
So in Commander,
I think an example of magnifying would be if you won a game. So this is very similar to the marathon thing, but you were really focused on one turn where you made a misplay rather than acknowledging that that was just kind of one moment in a game that overall went really well for you.
yeah, I think that I do this a lot. I think I struggle with magnifying a bit in Commander, but I really find one thing that's a misplay, and I'll talk about it after the game. I always bring it up.
Yeah.
Always at the end of the game, I'll be like, damn, I really shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And even if I won.
Yeah, it's still like, I could have done this thing better. Like, I mean, I've seen you win in a particular way and then go, oh man, I feel bad about winning that way. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
another thing that can happen.
I've sometimes gone, wow, I made it way more complicated than I needed to. I could have won like this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you still won.
You won, dude. You won.
You still won the game.
It's okay, you won.
Yeah.
Look, I think the other side of this, which is probably the one that I suffer with more, is minimizing. So minimizing would be winning a game and having someone compliment your deck and say something like, oh my God, that deck was so cool. I think that's a really awesome deck that you've built. And you think or say something like, oh, I just got lucky, or like, oh, other people have better decks, or like, oh, I had a really good draws. Like, you're minimizing what someone is saying to you, which is, I really enjoyed your deck.
Like I had the God hand.
Yeah, and then you're like,
that,
I was just luck, you know? And you're minimizing that achievement, which was winning a game and having someone enjoy your deck.
I think luck is a common crutch for Commander players to fall back onto with minimizing.
Well, it can go both ways, luck, can't it? Because it can be like, you know, like magnifying can happen with luck too, where someone can like get a couple of bad draws and then lose the game. And maybe they did make other mistakes that might be more worthwhile looking at, but they're like, oh, the luck. Yeah. It was the luck that did it to
I
me.
think that's also damaging in a different way, right? Because that's not even just you going, this was my mistake. You're blaming it on a fairy. Like, you're blaming it on fake, like, just luck. You can't blame something on luck.
Well, you don't have any control over that, right? It doesn't do you any good. Yeah, look, I think in terms of how me and you go with this, like, I definitely minimize a lot. I find it really hard to accept compliments in my life, in general.
In general, in life, yeah. Because just before we recorded, by the way, I sat down at Walt's desk and Walt was modding Skyrim. I'd never seen anything like that before, and I found it unbelievably complicated and impressive to watch happen. And legitimately, 20 minutes ago, you just said, oh, you know, it's pretty, like, people do all the hard work for me and I just do this bit. It's like, okay, but yeah, I have no idea what you're doing. This is still very impressive to me. Like,
this is a really common one for me.
Yeah.
Someone like, oh, this is a really cool thing you're doing. And I'm like, oh, this is almost like deflecting at this point, right? It's like, oh, that I might be okay, but these other things are way cooler.
Yeah.
And to be honest, a big one for me has just been learning to say the words thank you. Even if I don't say anything else, if someone just says to me, like, you know, a big thing for me was like, if I wore an outfit that I thought was kind of cool and someone was like, oh, I like those shoes, I'd be like, oh, here's where I got them from. And it's
You're
like,
not even taking credit
I'm
for
not
wearing
taking
the
credit
shoes.
for wearing the shoes. It's like if someone says, I like this shirt or I like this thing, the first thing I always try to say now is thank you. And then more. Like, then it's like, thank you, I got it from here. Or thank you, I actually op-shopped this.
I
or
think
something like that.
because then if you repeat that pattern over time, you're going to convince yourself that you do deserve some of that credit and you deserve it.
Cognitive behavioral therapy. We told you we were going to do it to you.
About how many episodes ago? It was like 10 episodes ago. We like touched, well, when we went into green, the philosophy of green, we talked about cognitive behavioral therapy.
We 100% did, yeah.
We are just like so into our own therapy. We've started projecting it into Commander. Look, I think in regards to magnifying and minimizing, I magnify a lot. That is something that I really, really struggle with, especially at the moment. I'm not sure if you've heard me say this in the past month. I am on a horrific losing streak.
Yeah,
I have just been losing a lot of games, and I naturally am trying to find why I'm losing them. So I'm searching quite literally in the game to find the mistake that cost me the game.
Yeah.
And I think while I'm scanning the game with a magnifying glass, I've just started doing this and I'm trying to get better at it, is try and hover that magnifying glass over the good things. So instead of magnifying the bad moments of like, oh, I should have blocked that attack because then I would have had 10 more life.
Yeah.
I can magnify something like, oh my God, like the other day I had Academy Manufacturer and
yeah.
inspiring statuary down in the same time in a like tokens
And
flicker build.
You had like 8 clues or something, and you were convoking stuff, or kind of convoking stuff.
Improvising stuff with
yeah.
the inspiring statuary. And I was like, I've never had that combo before.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
It was busted.
I like forced myself, because I lost that game. I forced myself to pull that magnifying glass
Sure.
from the terrible bit of the game
Yeah.
back onto that bit. And I was like, that was great sequencing. That was a clever thought that I had about combining those 2 cards together. And it made me feel better at the game. And like over time, I think if I keep doing this, I'm going to get better at telling myself that, no, I've done something good. And I honestly think that the episode we did recently, Achievement Unlocked,
Oh, sure.
where we recognize things in the game
that weren't winning, but were achievements.
Yeah. I think doing that episode has really switched my mind about thinking about a game as almost chapters in a storybook and being like, I really enjoyed chapter 4 because in chapter 4, I did this amazing thing.
Yeah,
you know?
And it's not about the end of that book necessarily. It's like, no, chapter 4 was really good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that bit where I was the hero.
But it takes a lot of time to be retrospective with this stuff. And I want to point to what the Space Commanders said, which was the first thing they said was with time.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be the first step with these kinds of cognitive distortions, and basically one you can apply to all the ones we talk about after this. The first step is to stop yourself when you are upset.
Yeah.
And so you might not necessarily even think that you're upset, but there is something blocking you from getting to that place. And so, yeah,
for sure.
Like for me, recognizing, like stopping and recognizing, oh, every time anyone compliments me, I deflect away to something else and going, I better learn to say thank you. That took me being out of the moment. Like it wasn't like someone said to me, complimented me, and I was like in the moment, like, you know what, I'm going to change this narrative right now. You know what I mean? It took time and it took reflection and it took not being in that stressful scenario for me to be able to learn that was what I had to do.
And it's a really cognitive thing. Like you have to cognitive. Yeah, obviously it's cognitive. That's what we're talking about. But it's a thing that you actively have to think about.
It's active
in those moments. And it takes a long time for you to be able to recognize it. Like for me, when I magnify a mistake, the emotion that links to me is anger, one of frustration, and it's directed at myself. It's self like inflicted. But when I feel that anger come up, it's now slowly, just recently, starting to trigger a little bell in my head going, hey, we're feeling angry. Do you think that's justified, or do you think you're magnifying that mistake?
Yes.
Have a proper think about it now. And when I do, I go, okay, let's move the magnify glass over to this part of the game.
Yeah.
Now how do I feel?
Yeah.
I feel much better. I don't feel angry anymore.
Yeah. The thing that happens here is this active thinking that you do in those quieter moments when you have the mental faculty to do it.
It's usually in the car ride on the way home from the LGS.
Something like that reflective time that each of us has in a day. It's working on it in that active time that improves our ability to passively do that. So then, it's not like you... Well, it's funny. The passive is then making you active again. Because now, and then you get angry, and passively you're going, oh, I'm angry. And then you're actively thinking about why am I angry and that kind of thing.
And this is why therapy, like scheduled therapy sessions are great, because it dedicates 45 minutes to an hour, however long your therapy is, to do that, to actively reflect. And then when you're out in the real world, you don't have your therapist with you, but over time and doing it enough times, you'll do it naturally and without thinking. There was actually... like a real moment in my life just recently. I won't go into the details, but I had a moment where I did something passively. Like I stopped magnifying a mistake and just kind of went on with my day and kind of left it behind. And it was only much later in therapy that my therapist went, hey, you did that without thinking about it. Did you realize that part of your day was doing something that you struggled with for ages and have now just moved on from?
Yeah.
It's a really big moment when you get that. And I think in a Commander game, especially at the end of a Commander game, when your salt levels are high, you're tilting and you're really reflecting on that one misplay that was absolutely backbreaking to you. There'll be a moment where you lose a game, you had a misplay, but you don't think about it, and you go, wow, that was a really fun game. In this bit, I did this. And then you'll get in the car, drive home and go, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah.
I told myself the right thing.
I changed that narrative in my head. Yeah. Look, the really crucial step here is recognizing that sometimes your mind is leading you astray. That's that first thing, and that's what that distance is needed for. But then, you will have moments where you've kind of started to learn a new thought pattern that happens there.
And it will just happen naturally. Yeah.
It will. The next one I wanted to talk about, the second of our cognitive distortions, is what's called all or nothing thinking. Sometimes called black and white thinking. The idea that things can only be all good or all bad.
There's no grey area.
No, and it's the opposite of that yin and yang diagram that we're also familiar with. In Commander, this might manifest in the way of like, if you win, your deck is great. And if you lose, your deck definitely needs some work.
That rings a bell to remind me of someone in the room.
If you win, this is the other way it manifests is if you win, you're a great player. If you lose, you're a bad player.
And that reminds me of the other person in the room. So how do we do with this? Then,
you've already said it, but my inner tinkerer sees any bad game as reasoning for fixing a deck. Like I can have literally like a deck I haven't played in a month. Pull it out for one game, not draw enough lands, and go, I'm not got enough lands, not got enough card draw in that deck. Because I lost, the deck needs work.
I have gotten texts from you after a Commander night of you coming home and making 5 changes to cards that you've never seen in a game ever. Modern Horizons 3 comes out, and Walt's like, oh, cool, I'm going to make all these changes to my decks with Modern Horizons 3
5
cards.
new cards.
5 new cards. Yeah. Then he'll go to the game store, play a game, not see those cards, but he'll lose that game and go, nah, these edits were terrible. I'm going to take them out.
Yeah.
It's like, what's your
Yeah.
sample size? You one game sample size?
Yeah, it's obviously not a good way of seeing it, but this is that black and white thinking, right? It's going, oh, I lost and therefore something is wrong.
Yeah.
And then the inverse obviously is if you won, then there's nothing wrong. And so people sometimes do this either way, right? Like some people will go, you'll go like, oh, is there enough lands in that deck? You only had 3 lands the whole game. And they'll go like, yeah, but I won. So the deck's fine.
Yeah, they reinforce a bad behavior because they're distorting their reality by thinking, oh, if I won, then it must be fine.
If I win, the deck works.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it works every single time. And it's like, well, no, bad decks can win and good decks can lose.
Yes.
And that's basically, how the next step here, I mean, the other one, right, that we were talking about, if you win, you're a great player. If you lose, you're a bad player. I suspect this is the one that you felt.
Yeah, 100%. That hit home. I mean, that whole losing streak thing is one thing, but I think I'm actually getting better at this distortion. I mean, I have discussions after the game, but I'm now exploring that gray area in between those two black and white decisions of like, I'm terrible or I'm amazing. I will go and reflect on the whole game. Like my magnifying glass that I was referring to earlier will scan the whole game now instead of just my mistakes or just my victories.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to look at the whole thing. And I think one of the things that's really helping me with this, weirdly, is CEDH. I'm playing a lot more tournaments in CEDH now, and I'm signing up for more, which means I have a tracked performance. Like on EDH Top 16, you can go on and search my deck lists and see my performance.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, like everyone that plays in a competition, if you're using Top Deck GG,
has a profile.
You'll have a profile, and people can go and look at your win rates and losses and all this kind of stuff. And the really tricky thing is, in Commander, when you're playing tournaments, you win or you draw or you lose. Now, that's the same case in all tournaments, but in Commander, you have 4 people playing. So your likelihood just on pure stats of losing is higher. Like if every game was decided, like if you were playing a standard tournament and you decided every game with a coin flip, your likelihood of winning is 50-50, right? If every game of Commander, a CEDH tournament, was decided on the roll of a D4, you've got 25% chance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like usually stats are really hard to look at as a CEDH player.
Definitely.
So sometimes I look at my stats and I go, wow, I have lost every game in this tournament. Or I've drawn and lost. I've not won a single game.
Sure.
However, the thing that I'm starting to do is reflect on the times I'm presenting a win.
Oh, like the turn that you went for it. Like
Yes.
the turn that you were like, okay, saw in half targeting Cormella.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Or
nature.
Curiosity targeting Niv Mizzet.
Sure,
Like, this
I
is-
went for the win.
I'm going for the win. And like assembling a win in CEDH is a challenging thing, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of complicated lines to it. There's
considering
things to
cards
consider.
in hand, you're considering mana open.
There's all these things. And sometimes there are things that are just out of your control or you didn't see coming, like a counterspell from a player that is like out of lands and 1 card in hand.
Yep.
Like that stuff, if I see one player with no cards, like 1 card in hand and no open mana, I'm like, cool, I'm going to go for it because
Yeah.
that player's got nothing. And then they have the Pact of Negation.
Yeah.
You're just like, well, like,
What are the odds of that?
What are
Yeah.
the odds of that? Like really low. So I've started to look at the times I've presented a win because those are times where I've like, right, I figured out the line. I went for it. I did this. I did that. That's enough for me.
Sure.
Even though it doesn't reflect in my stats, I remember that in that tournament, I had 5 win attempts in 4 games.
Yeah.
Like, that's good for me.
That is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I want to draw our attention to the next thing that the Space Commander said, which was that distortions must be challenged. And I think this is going to be the big step here, and something that you clearly are working on is challenging your thoughts and interrupting the cognitive distortion as it's happening. So kind of counterspell them. So
have the Pact of Negation with 1 card in hand. When your brain has 7 cards in hand and 10 open mana, you just have that 1 Pact of Negation. All tapped out, but you can still cast that pact.
the best Pact of Negation is the one in your mind,
Whoa.
young one.
Well, welcome to the Philosophy Podcast with Walt and James.
We're not talking about Commander anymore. No. Anyway, basically,
We've got tweed jackets on with leather patches on the elbows.
So the challenge, I think, for all or nothing thinking specifically is to think that in most of these cases, there is a spectrum of possibilities between these two extremes that you have in your head.
Yeah.
And literally try to, in your head, articulate what some of them are. So in the case of mine, the distortion was if I win, my deck is great. If I lose, my deck needs work. Some of the questions I might ask myself is, can a great deck have bad draws?
Yeah.
And the answer is obviously yes.
You
right?
shuffle the deck. It's random. The whole point of it being random is anything can be anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So like if I shuffle my deck, there is a likelihood that 10 lands are on the top of my library.
And the inverse. I played my Victus as Marty deck in quite a long game. It was a 3-player game, so somehow it was more agonizing. I couldn't tell you why that's the case. Maybe it just got more scrutiny. I'm not sure. But I played my Victus as Marty deck. I had 3 cards in hand. I had like 2 or 3 different ways to draw cards in my hand and then later on the field. I think I got to a point where I had drawn about 20 cards from my deck. This is a deck with, I think, 39 lands in it. I did not find a 4th land in that game.
Wow.
I ended up
chances
conceding.
of that are so low.
I just conceded because I was like, is at a point in the game now where even if I found lands, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, I'm so far behind, I'm not recovering. But I really had to like tell myself, there's nothing wrong with this deck. You know how many lands are in this deck, Walt.
39 is more than most people run in their deck.
100% it is. And I had to remind myself, no, Walt, there are plenty of lands in this deck. The chances that you miss a land in about 20 draws off the top after I had 3 in my opening hand. The likelihood of that is astronomically low.
Yeah.
You just got to write that off. You can't be considering that as a valid example of that deck's performance.
Yeah.
Because just luck. Luck sometimes gets you.
Yep, I think I'm in a similar boat. Like, I need to challenge the distortion of, like, if I win, I'm a great player.
Yeah.
And if I lose, I'm bad. Because a question that I can ask to that to, like, be like, hey, distortion, you're wrong, is a great player can lose consistently. Like, a great player can go on a losing streak. Like, there's shout out to one of the players in our Australian CDH Discord, David. I think we've referenced him a few times.
Oh, coolly.
On this podcast. He is a dedicated CDH player, right? Like, he studies CDH and he has a deck that he tinkers. He's written primers. Like, he is a next level player. And I got on a call with him maybe a month ago and he was like, wow, I went 3 tournaments back to back, losing all of them. And lost every game. And I'm like, dude, you're a great player and you're playing like a pretty competitive deck. Like, he's on Tivit at the moment.
Yeah,
it's not,
which has been his deck that he's written the primer for, I believe.
I believe he's written a primer for Urza, not Tivit.
Sure. But he's been on Tivit for a long time.
And he's been like really dedicated to it and won tournaments. He won an American tournament with Tivit. So he's he's a real good player.
Sure.
And he told me like losing back to back to back to back. And I'm like, you're one of the best players I know.
But it's so hard to see from the it's easier to see from the outside, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You look at David and you see all the wins in the context of these losses that he's had lately, and you go, oh, I know you're losing right now. I've seen all your wins, dude.
But then I can also go, right, well, if David is losing all these, then maybe I can as well. Like, it's fine for me to be on this losing streak or not have great tournament results, because even David, my tournament results for the past like 3 months might look a bit better than David's.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm nowhere near as good as him.
Yeah.
Like, nowhere near. But like, I got a top 5. Like, I got in a top 4 in Dockside Debacle. I got top 16 in one of the Pride Nauseam events. So like, you know, you just have to take things as they come and really challenge them when they reach you. Like really say, is this thing that my brain is telling me valid? And ask the question that makes it prove if it's valid or not. And the second you do that, it will crumble.
This is going much more into cognitive behavioral therapy for 1 second here. This is not in the script, and this is not something that's been recommended for cognitive distortions. But
what the asterisk with the short text at the bottom.
But one really great way to challenge, I think, any thoughts that are probably leading you astray is to really contextualize them within the context of, okay, if this was someone else and they said they were having this problem to me, what would I think of them as a result of them having this problem?
Oh,
like really set, because
wow.
a lot of our distortions are to do with, I have these standards for me that are different to the standards I hold for everyone else. So like, you know, if someone said to me like, I won like 10 games in a row and then I lost 3. I feel like I'm a really terrible player. I'd be like, no, you're a great player. You won heaps of games. Like I've seen you do absolutely amazing in games before. And so you got to go, okay, well then that's you, Walt. All right. That's you, the person, are saying, I lost all these games recently. Am I a bad player? And so you have to tell you the same way you would tell anybody else. That's okay. You're a great player. I know you are.
I know it sounds really simple and really dumb, but treat yourself like you would treat your friend.
Yeah.
It's really simple and really silly, but at the end of the day, like I would never say to Walt, you're a terrible player because you lost the last 3 games.
Yeah.
What? You suck, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at you. I would never do that to you, but in my own head, I might do it to myself. So
yeah, it's wild. Like I suspect you would not say that to anyone full stop.
No.
But you'll say it to yourself. You know, and I do the same thing. And it's wild, these things we convince ourselves about ourselves that, are just not true.
Yeah.
And be as kind to yourself, at least, as you are to the people around you.
Right. I reckon that was some 2 pretty heavy topics for the start of the podcast. Should we take a break?
Let's take a thrifty interlude.
A thrifty interlude. This break is the drive on the way home from your LGS. Like after your commander, this is your little break. You're on your own. You got your radio.
This is tuning into the radio. Yeah. This is you're tuning into Roy and HG. Deep cut. I don't know why I brought that up. Anyway, we've got lots to talk about. We've got 2 more cognitive distortions for you. Before that, we're going to hear a little something about a thrifty card. As is tradition, I will be performing, and this week it's the Cowled Merchant with some new wares. James, would you like to read the card we're featuring this week?
Yeah, is this the Cowled Merchant?
Oh.
Because this week's card is Savvy Trader. For 3 and a green, you get a creature human citizen that looks like someone trading in the art. They're like trading things. That feels like Cowled Merchant to me. But the Savvy Trader says, when it enters, exile target permanent card from your graveyard. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. And spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 1 less to cast.
Ever wanted to be me? Charismatic, charming, chitinous, cheap, clever, adjectives, synonyms, and so much more. Then it might be time for you to become a merchant. Profit from any man, object, vessel, idea, stench, vibe, or hose, provided that the price is right, and never worry about scruples ever again. What's a scruple? I think it's what you say to your father when you want to play with his cordless drill again. And a screw, please, Papa! This is what we call a sales pitch. I'll tell you more about it later in exchange for that hat. Roam the world and live by the seat of your pants, which is handy because my pants are a seat, and all I had to do was sit in some concrete. Which reminds me, for some extra money, I can eternalize your most important feature in that new fountain over there with no ifs, ands, or buts. Or maybe not that last one. Get budgeted!
He was actually selling the concept of himself. That's the most meta the Cowled Merchant has ever been.
So, you're just saying something.
But I'm trying to like now make it not meta, right? In my mind, he's in Thunder Junction, right? He's on the plane of Thunder Junction. And he's seen the Savvy Trader card person. And he's kidnapped them and is trying to sell it to somebody. Like sell the person Savvy Trader to someone.
No, he's got the outfit. That's what he's got.
He just
like,
stole the Savvy Trader's
do you want to be
clothes.
this guy? This is what it's like to be that guy.
Put on his hat.
Yeah. Look, Thrifty Thursdays happens every week in our Discord server. You can check out the dedicated channel or play some games or get some advice on your latest deck. deck.
Yeah, always good discussions going on in that server, but we have cognitive distortions to
Yeah,
bust.
it's time to distort your brain. Wait, no.
Other way
Opposite
around.
of that.
We've got time to... No, it's like a Mythbusters episode.
Ah.
We've got cognitive distortions to bust.
Honestly, I kind of like that, the idea that you're like holding up beliefs that you have in your head and it's like, you know, the plausible stamp comes through
Or
the
busted
like
and it just blows up.
Yeah, it's like blow up that idea.
Magnifying and minimizing.
Yeah.
Busted. Boom. Right, what's the next one?
The next one I have for us to talk about is what's called the mental filter.
Okay.
Notably, this is basically a filter that's filtering for only the negative things that occur.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
There's a lot of
It's always
overlap.
like it's whenever there's negative emotions involved, it's like our brain is trying to search for them in a weird way, either with a magnifying glass or a filter.
Yes.
Or there is
It's
a pattern
true.
going on here.
No matter what implement you use to find the thing is always just terrible.
Yeah, there's another cognitive distortion called gold panning for negative thoughts, where you like shake a
it's
pan.
like, oh, what's this? Oh, it's terrible again.
It's childhood trauma.
Why is that always in the creek? I don't know.
Ballarat's a weird place, man.
Sovereign Hill. You can go there for only no.
A side note, if you're an American listener and had no idea what we're talking about, one of our school excursions, every Victorian has experienced this one school excursion.
I was sick for mine, so I
missed out?
haven't been to mine.
Oh my god, we need to go to Sovereign
no,
Hill.
we don't. We definitely
Yes,
don't.
we do.
Basically, a lot of the smaller cities in Melbourne, and even actually Melbourne itself, kind of owe a lot of the wealth that produced all of those cities to the gold rush.
Yeah, there was a big gold rush in like early settlement in Australia, and a lot of it happened in and around Victoria, namely like Ballarat, Bendigo, places, and Sovereign Hill was where a huge riot happened and an uprising and
enormous amount of gold that was just there, and everyone was trying to search it. And basically, they were like, you know, immigrant workers who were working the gold fields trying to find gold like everybody else.
Big story, but that's where that joke came from.
Yes.
Back to mental distortions.
Yes. The mental filter, like you're in filtering for gold, except it's never gold, it's always the opposite. So in Commander, this might manifest in a way of remembering only your misplays after a game instead of times where things went well.
Yep.
That sounds a bit familiar. This is an interesting one I thought of. Having cards milled and thinking only about how you wish you had drawn them.
Oh, you know
There's
what?
a particular sort of player who suffers from this. It's not me and you.
I think
but
it's
worth
new
bringing
players.
up.
I
Yes.
think new players fall into this trap a lot when they see. That's why we weirdly, when you think of mill, you don't, as an experienced player, we don't associate salt to it.
No.
But I think new players look at mill as this like, I'm taking resources away from you. When really it's not doing that in a weird, it kind of is and kind of isn't.
We'll go into it later, but sometimes it's giving you resources.
Yeah,
which we'll definitely need
sometimes.
to talk about. Another really classic case is like remembering someone's removal on your commander, but nothing else that they've done that might have been nice to you. In a
Yes.
game, getting the real, you're filtering for only that one thing that happened that made you really upset. That's my only focus in this game now.
I'll tell you what's a big thing about this one, I think, is hindsight.
Yeah.
Hindsight becomes a big player in this situation because for me anyway, like how I deal with this like mental filter is in hindsight, I recognize things that are misplayed. So like there might be information that I learn later in a game that makes a game action that I made earlier in the game a bit stupid.
But you didn't know that information at the time.
Didn't know it at the time, but
Yeah.
now my brain is like filtering for all the information that about that play.
Sure.
So let's say, for example, I deploy a threatening creature, right? And let's say I did it at the time. So this is as I'm playing it. My brain is like, wow, this is a good opportunity to cast a Tali. Everyone, like it's post board wipe.
Yep.
Everyone's tapped out and I can do this. I play it. And then it like, you know, and a turn goes round and it nearly gets to my turn again and go, wow, I'm about to attack with a Tali. This is great. And then someone just casts, go for the throat. And they get rid of it. I now go, right, okay, they removed it, and they put it into my graveyard. After the game, I'm going, why didn't that play work? And I filter everything, and I go through everything, and I go,
I
it's
shouldn't
because
have cast
that
that.
person had to go for the throat. That was the mistake. I shouldn't have cast it into that go for the throat.
Yeah.
How the am I meant to know that person had to go for the throat in their hand?
There was never a way for you to know that. And then you even can start distorting this further and start going like, oh, I should have known.
Yes.
They had 2 mana open and 7 cards in hand. I should have known there was a removal spell in there. It's like, No.
7 cards are like just 7 cards. And if you
Yes.
think about the chances of them having it, like how many removals do we recommend? Like targeted 7? That's usually
Yeah,
a
7, 8,
recommendation.
9, something
so
like that.
7 cards, and we recommend you run 7 pieces of removal. That is not many cards to get a chance of drawing a removal spell.
No.
Usually when we're looking for removal, we have to dig for it, right? Sometimes when we have removal in our hand and it's the perfect opportunity to like play it, like for example, someone just cast a Tali and we just
you've got 2 mana.
happen to have a Go for the Throat in our hand. That's like a, wow, I got really lucky here. I can get rid of that Atali.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, like on the other side, you go, oh, I should have known that. But the other person was like, I didn't know an Atali was about to come down. I got real lucky with this Go for the Throat.
Yeah, big time.
It's a real flip.
Yeah, and it's the hindsight thing that gets you, for sure. I think for me, this is one that I probably struggle with a bit less than some of the other ones we talked about so far today. I do think if I'm having a bad day already...
If you're bringing emotions into things.
I really get the blinkers on and I'm focused on the negative stuff. Something bad happens and I'm like, that's the worst. These 4 things that happened today totally suck and I can't see any of the other things that might have happened. Spoiler, the Space Commanders thing that they said was search for the positive.
There's a bit of a pattern here.
There's this bit of a pattern here. So yeah, we're going to counterspell those thoughts again. So yeah, as some examples, can you think of anything that happened in the game that did go well? This is back to that achievement unlocked thing. I think this is the big one for the mill thing, like we were talking about. Does the milled cards open up any exciting possibilities for your Sun Titan?
Oh my God, this is the thing, right? This is what I was trying to say. Like, experienced players see your opponent milling you. If you're an experienced player and you know you've got graveyard recursion, you're like, wow, I kind of just drew those cards.
Yeah, I have access to a fetch land now with my Sun Titan. I can hit my extra land drop every turn.
Yeah, or like, wow, I have Savine Reclamation in bin now. I can cast
it with flashback.
Savine Reclamation.
Even if Faithless Looting hits your bin, and you can be like, wow, my card's in hand, I've got 3 lands. Now I can ditch 2 of them to Faithless Looting and draw 2 better cards
That feels
instead.
fantastic. Oh, look, I've got this big Delve spell. Thanks for filling up my bin.
Yeah, there are so many things that get opened up by mill that people miss.
And I think new players fall into the trap of seeing, it's like when, someone goes, right, I'm going to cast this, Fraying Sanity, for example, and everyone mills 14, and everyone goes, right, I milled this. I think experienced players look at something milled and go, woo, glad we don't have to see that in a game.
Yes.
And because they're kind of making a joke about how it's lucky that they milled it because now their opponent has to go through extra steps to get it again.
Yes.
It's like a bit of a victory. But as a new player, you hear that and you look at your own cards that you're milling and like, oh no, I don't have this. This is one of the best cards in my deck. Oh no, this as well. This too, man. And it's like this, like piling up of pressure of like, you now are not going to win. I think this is one of the cognitive distortions that would happen most in game as well. Like I know I spoke about hindsight, but this is something, especially with this mill example. The more you mill the cards, the more you go, oh no, it's worse and worse.
It's worse and worse. There's more and more stuff going badly for me. This game sucks. I'm doing so terribly. Yeah, I think like. Yeah, you really need to focus on the positives here in order to counterspell this thing. Because, like, you are going to find that it will happen more and more. They kind of snowball, don't they? That's the thing that happens.
And I think you have to catch it almost while it's happening. Because you said before, like, there's a possibility for a Sun Titan to be really good after getting milled. Hey, let's say there's a situation where someone's casting a removal spell on your Atali. You might be able to talk to that player and get a political deal out of them. Like, see moments as not just a bad thing. See them as an opportunity to turn them good. I think this is something billionaires annoyingly write about in books where they go, oh yeah, I saw my disadvantage and I made something of it and I made it, dude, I just like saw all the debt that I was in and flipped it and made it a house,
So it's like the debt your father was in.
Yeah.
Elon. Your father was in debt.
But I think the advice is sound in that you can turn a pretty challenging situation in Commander, by the way. I'm talking about in Commander.
I don't know. If you're that guy, you can be like, hold on, none of these debts are mine. They're my dad's debts. This is the best day of my life.
Money isn't real. But in Commander, I think you can look at these hard times that you're in and try and make something out of it.
Yeah.
I know we joke a lot about how I politic when my back's against the wall, but that's me trying to make a positive of a pretty terrible situation I'm in.
Totally.
And I think this is weirdly one of the cognitive distortions with that I struggle with the least as well. I think that I'm pretty good at getting in these situations and going, right, this isn't a bad thing. How can I win from here? When I'm in the game, I'm very much like, what's my line? Where is my line here? Surely, if someone's pointing a removal spell at something, I've got to have a way out. What's my way out?
And I think, like, even with these kinds of things, like, you know, the example we gave before was, like, you remember that someone removed your commander, and that's the only thing you remember them doing. I've seen really great political players where something like that'll happen, and they'll go like, okay, we're kind of even now. You know, like to the player who just removed something.
We feel like we've cut off each other's arms.
Yeah, my board's been answered. Your board's looking okay, but not great. Maybe we should, the two of us, focus on player 3 over here.
Yeah, look, I'll give you a really good example of this in a gameplay video I saw recently.
Yeah.
In a CEDH game, someone was trying to resolve a dockside.
Sure.
And there was this moment of all the players being like, right, we're definitely going to be behind. Let's team up and do this against each other. But in that kind of conversation, someone fired off a chain of vapor towards someone else's thing. And then they had a moment of, oh, this is really bad for me. I'm losing one of my things. But hang on, we've got an opportunity now to keep copying this chain of vapor and bounce all our own enchantments and artifacts and make this dockside make 0 treasures. It was like a great thing to watch because I was like, wow, they've lost so much, but they did it together and now the other opponent is on the same level as them. Like, they saw a really bad situation, made it worse for themselves, and at the end of it, made it better for themselves. It was kind of, it was one of those things of like filtering out. They were filtering in the moment of like, oh, this is so bad. They were only focusing on the bad thing of, wait, hang on, this is an opportunity.
Yeah,
now.
Searching for the positives really makes a difference. I think similar to what we said earlier about the magnifying, minimizing, I think, the more you actively search for positives in your life by having these reminders to yourself of like, okay, let me search for the positives here, let me search for the positives here, the more your brain will just passively take note of them and the easier you will find those positives as a result. Like, there's a reason that there's such a resurgence of mindfulness, you know, training at the moment of like, take stock, be thankful, like stuff like this. And it's because when you every day are reminding yourself of things you're thankful for, you start to notice them when you're in them as well. Like, you know, it's like I personally, this is really personal now, but just before bed, I do a bit of a reflection on the day. I have these sort of 3 things I run through. But one of them is I force myself to go, okay, what are 3 things you're grateful for today?
Yeah.
And it means like sometimes I go, I'm really grateful I've got a friend like James. And it means that the next time we're hanging out, sometimes you'll find yourself in the moment of being with the thing you're thankful for and go, man, this is great.
Yeah.
You know,
really
it wakes you up in the moment of it.
It's like you've done a stock take of your own life and you've gone, hang on, I've still got snacks in the cupboard. Yeah. Snacks are awesome. I love snacks.
That's the real takeaway.
I like how you went, I've got a great friends like James. And I'm like, I have chippies.
Yeah. That's what your friends would be, right? All my great snacks.
You've got some really great bickies.
I've worked you out. I knew that. The last cognitive distortion I wanted to talk about, spoiler, this is the one I struggle with the most by far, are should statements.
Oh, I know what you mean here. This is where we're like, if we have a certain assumption about something going a particular way and we think it should go that way, it always has to go that way. Like, there is no ifs, ands, or buts. It is always going to go that way.
It's funny, like, theoretically the word should is not that, like, hard, but when we say shoulds to ourselves, they become these hardline rules. So some examples of shoulds in Commander, you should win 25% of the games you play.
Yep, that's one we've even said on this podcast.
We have said that. You should not play stacks in Commander.
We've actually said the opposite of this on this podcast. Yeah.
I should not get upset when a game of Commander isn't enjoyable for me.
Oh, that's a good one.
So there's a lot. You can just keep on reeling them off. They're basically like things that are kind of rules in your head that you don't realize have become rules in your head.
I mean, even like you get down to the granular level, I should hit every land drop.
Yep.
Like, that's like such a simple one, but like, I think all of us expect this weird, like when we sit down to a game, we automatically assume that we should hit every land drop.
Yeah.
And when we don't, it's like, I should be hitting my land drop. Like in your Vevictus example that you were saying earlier, you probably had that moment of like, I should be hitting my land drop. There are 39 lands in this deck.
Every turn that went through my mind.
It is a Jund deck. Where's my king ramp?
Or card draw. Yeah. Jund's supposed to do everything. Jund doesn't do anything.
Junded me out.
This is definitely like, this is something in my life I personally struggle with a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's something that can come with a lot of awareness of people around you and things that are healthy, that kind of thing. It can be turned into, I should eat a certain way, or I should exercise every day, or I should never make my opponents upset. This is, I think, one of the only cognitive distortions that I'm, off the top of my head, this is the only one that my psychologist has explicitly named with me. This is how much it's a struggle with me.
Statements.
He was like, I want you to take stock of every time you tell yourself a should in your head.
Wow.
It's a big thing. Big thing for me.
I think that I respect that you're being so open about this, because I think that, you have shown me a lot of times that you have very strong opinions about how you personally should live your life. Mm-hmm. And you put all of those expectations on only yourself, and you try so hard all the time to make sure you're living that way. Like you mentioned, like you should exercise every day. Mm-hmm. You have a very strict exercise regime.
Yep.
Even eating correctly. Walt is the only person I know that weighs his muesli in the morning.
It's the only thing I weigh. But yes, I do.
You do. And it's this kind of like expectation. And I think that I have it too. And I think there is a common thread that comes through a lot of, I was going to say men, but I think anyone can have this at our age. And it's this, I should be an adult. I've been struggling with that a lot recently, specifically around like the tidiness of my kitchen.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that I have if someone's coming round to my house and I have like a, pile of pots and pans on my kitchen bench, I look at it and my brain immediately goes, you should be an adult, James. You should have put in those pans away. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have to clean up those now.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I'll like really random stuff. Like I'll, maybe be getting ready for work one day and one of my shirts isn't ironed. And my brain goes, you should have ironed your clothes.
Yeah.
Like you should have done that. And I think
some of these are really pervasive. Yeah.
And I think a real big part of this is just societal expectations, right?
Definitely.
And that's the biggest voice in your brain that will start making you say these things is what you think society is saying is what you start telling yourself.
Yes.
And I think that we as a generation, and I'm saying like our generation of like millennials and Gen Z, we're in a weird position because we're the generation that's challenging these ideals, but also at the same time still expecting ourselves to live by them.
Yeah.
It's a weird position we've put ourselves in. And I think that it's a challenging thing. Like, we said one of the things that the Space Commander said before was challenge these thoughts. It's getting harder and harder to challenge them because there is more people in society. Like, people are living longer. That means people that are much older that have a lot stronger ideals of what you should do day to day in like, a baby boomer or Gen X. I'm not like trying to start a war with the boomers, but like what I'm saying is their ideals are very sound and solid and that's still being bred into society. And I think that it's talking down to our generations and we're struggling to cope with not meeting those expectations.
Yeah, big time. I want to point to what the Space Commander said, which was replace absolutes. Because I do think that the thing I said, like should sounds like a soft word, but when you play these out, they are hard expectations. They are absolutes about how the world should be done.
I'll remind you that Obi-Wan Kenobi said only a Sith deals in absolutes. And you don't want to be a Sith.
The irony of that sentence being an absolute.
Yeah, only a Sith deal in absolutes is an absolute. Yeah.
Thanks, Obi-Wan. Classic Jedi things. Anyway, we're going to counterspell those thoughts. So The funny thing with shoulds is you actually try to go all in on them. So you go, what would be the effects of enforcing your way of thinking on everybody? Your should is an absolute, so you need to play out what the world would look like if this was forced. So
now pretend you're doing it to your friends.
yeah. So the example we gave, I should not play stacks in Commander. Okay, the question, would banning all forms of stacks make Commander better for everyone?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Definitely not, right?
Yep, nope. We covered that in our stacks episode.
Yes.
We really dove deep into that, actually.
There are a lot of pieces that are theoretically stacksy that actually help us to have a great format where people don't just explode all the time. You know, I run, like, there's treasure hate now. Artifacts enter the battlefield tapped is appearing on more and more
Sardian
cards.
Avenger is one of my all-time favorite cards that Walt plays.
Yep, when people sack treasures, they take a damage. It's very simple, very soft stacks. But if you were banning all stacks and saying no one should ever play stacks, would the world be better without them? No, definitely not.
No.
Everyone just plays all treasures all the time and turbo.
Yeah, I think that, like, I mean, you take another one, I should be happy when I'm uncomfortable in a game. That is a silly expectation.
Yeah.
That is like actually... So if one of your friends was having a bad time in a Commander game, would you go over to them and go, no, you should be having fun right now? Smile, bitch. Like, you should be having fun. No, you wouldn't. So stop telling yourself. If you are uncomfortable in a game and you're not having a good game... for whatever reason it might be. Maybe it's the deck that your opponent's playing. They're playing like a Send Triplets deck and you don't like that effect. Or maybe it's just one of the players. You don't particularly like playing with this particular person at your LGS.
Yeah.
You are not by law bound to your seat. You're not physically restrained in that seat.
No.
You have free will.
Yeah, and the irony of that one specifically is that the best way to work through that specific block of, man, I should be having fun, but I'm not having fun right now, is to actually articulate it to the table.
Yeah.
Because you either give people, if something genuinely egregious is happening, you give someone kind of the feedback of, like, this isn't fun. Like, you know, I've said before, I've been playing a graveyard deck, someone resolves Rest in Peace, and I'll say something like, man, my deck just doesn't do anything with that Rest in Peace on the board.
And I'm now not having fun.
Yeah, I'm not really having a good time right now. You don't have to get angry and be upset about it, but just articulating that out loud gives that person the signal of, oh, maybe I should warn people about Rest in Peace. But also the weight that is eased off your shoulders by just articulating, hey guys, I'm a bit upset right now. That's what will let you work through being upset. Not this like, stop being upset. Like this is this classic, like, sort of toxic masculine thought pattern of, don't be upset.
Don't cry. Don't cry.
It's like, no, that's not going to help anybody.
Yeah, I think that as well, when you have those moments of just saying how you feel at a table, it weirdly opens the door for some opportunities. I know I was talking about, like, trying to flip it and turn your, hardships into opportunities before, but these are real great moments because you can go, wow, with that Rest in Peace on the table, my Arami deck does nothing. Can anyone get rid of it for me?
Yeah, well, this is the thing.
I won't swing at you. I won't do this. I won't do that. Like, you now can have an opportunity just because you've got that first thought out of your brain. The first thought and the only thought that has been in your brain for the last 5 minutes because that Rest in Peace was I can't do anything. I should be able to do something. This sucks. Well,
this is that mental filter again. So, search for the positives.
Filter it out.
How can I
say it out loud? And now you can go, right, where is my opportunity? Yeah.
Where can I go from here? Yeah. And how can people help me? Yeah. I mean, look, even if you just turn those should statements into preferences, like, the stacks one, you could turn into, I prefer to not play against stacks in casual games of Commander. That is still a statement that stands on its own, but it's not an enforced, ultimatum, absolute about the world. It's a preference now. It's right. I personally don't like that. And so that's much easier to grapple with in the context of the world, right? You're not going to come into games and go, something deeply wrong is happening. You're going to come into games and go, this isn't going the way that I'd like it to go. And that's a much easier thing for you to deal with than the world is wrong right now.
I also think this one has a bit of a secret superpower in it that if you change your shoulds into I hopes or I prefer or this is what I like, it's easier for your opponents to deal with as well.
Absolutely.
Not just you. So now it's easier for you to get in a game where things are not going your way and go, look, this game isn't going my way, but the next one will be better. Like you've now got that. But now by doing that, you're not saying to your opponents, you shouldn't be playing stacks. I'm really upset. And then you're almost projecting all of your anger and frustration and sadness onto your opponent.
Yeah.
And then think about what it's like in their shoes. They go, oh my God, did I do something wrong?
Yeah.
Like I have ruined this person's
what have I
day with my
done?
deck. Like,
yeah.
by just changing your attitude to this isn't what I like to, this is what I hate to I don't like this that much.
Yeah.
And maybe the next one will be different. Just shifting the language just ever so slightly can make it easier for you and your opponents.
So much of the time, the player who is the one who is guilty of playing this in a particular way
The egregious thing of whatever.
is just new to Commander. Whether they're an established player in competitive formats, this is a common one. They come across to Commander and go, wow, Damnation is legal. Or not Damnation. What's the
Armageddon?
one? Armageddon.
Yeah.
Armageddon's legal. I'm just going to play Armageddon. And then they realize, oh, people don't like Armageddon. Or if they're just a brand new player and they go, oh, wouldn't it be funny if I blew up all the lands? Like, it will take a soft, guided bit of advice here to get them to consider the choices they're making, not, I'm so mad at you right now, you idiot. Like, they're just going to drop the game if you do that.
Well, I mean,
that doesn't help anybody.
Put yourself in their shoes. How would you like to be told that what you're doing with your deck is not fun for someone?
Yeah.
Would you rather be yelled at and say that you're the reason that they're having a terrible day?
Yeah.
Or would you rather them go, look, this isn't my game. I'm not really into it. I'll either go find another pod or we can find another deck that you have on you and the one that I will enjoy playing against.
Definitely. Look, all of us will fall into unhelpful thinking patterns sometimes, so it is important that we find ways to work through them. Take some time when you recognize that you are getting upset and challenge the inaccurate thoughts that are making your bad feelings worse. Work to replace absolutes that you hold about the Commander format, and above all, search for positives in your experiences to counteract the negativity. We play a great format, and you can and will play great games if you recognize them as such. So, Space Commanders,
Command received. Wow. A whole episode dedicated to stuff we've dealt with by paying someone to help us with. This is a weird episode, man.
No, it's a return on our investment, James.
Our investment in therapy has paid back because we've made this one podcast episode out of 104.
None of this debt is mine. Anyway, to you listeners out there, do you feel commanded? And which cognitive distortions are you most prone to?
Yeah, and obviously with this one, you can have a think about this in private.
You're totally welcome to.
You don't have to tell us, but if you do want to talk to us about it, and keep in mind, Walt and I are as candid in person as we are on this podcast.
Absolutely.
So if you did want to talk to us, you can message us on all the social platforms that we're on at Get Commanded everywhere, or you can come and hang out with our awesome community in our Twitch chat at twitch.tv/getcommanded, where every Monday night we play actual Commander, not just talk about it. And you might see James make a misplay and focus on it for way too long. And you might, in that chat, go, hey, James, don't you think you're magnifying this mistake a little bit? And I'll go, holy shit, I totally am. Thank you for being my therapist in the Twitch chat.
Or alternatively, I told you too much. Shut up.
Which is often my response to things that people say in chat. Like,
go,
James, didn't you tell me on the podcast once not to become the first threat?
Yeah.
Why have you become the first threat? I'm like, shut up. Do as I say, not as I do.
The eternal question. Look, the absolute best way to support our content so we can support you with our weird therapy thing, whatever this episode is Patreon. It's linked in the show notes. It's the absolute best way to support the Get Commanded podcast. We'd like to thank our patrons, Fuzzy, Bottomless Potamus, Dyer, Dylan Norg, Bertie, Crazy Logic, and Benjamin. And an extra special shout out to Fletcher Cutting and Wizard Down Under, who support us in the Space Commander tier. You're the best.
You are the best. And also the best, Palms Off Gaming. They're the sponsor of this podcast. These guys make awesome deck boxes, sleeves, binders, and other gaming accessories. And you can go to palmsoffgaming.com.au/#getcommanded to get a nice little 10% discount. And it supports us at the same time. So if you need sleeves and you want to support Get Commanded, go buy sleeves from palmsoffgaming.com.au/#getcommanded.
Yeah.
10% off and support us at the same time.
It'll make you feel better, but not as much as we make you feel better.
And not as much as us giving away Palms Off Gaming products makes you feel better. When it's
Which
free
we'll tell you about.
from us and from Palms Off Gaming, that's got to feel good.
Yeah, that's the best way to get stuff. It's for free. Speaking of things being No, I don't know. We've got a planeswalk. Planeswalking is free. Hey, there you go. There's no tariffs on planeswalking.
There you go. That's
Doesn't
true.
cost you anything.
I imagine at one point, now that like these omen paths are around, there's going to be
someone's gonna tax.
omen path like doorkeepers being like, pay your omen path fee.
Ever wanted to profit from the omen path?
He's back. He's here.
Get out of here, coward merchant. God, I don't know where he came from. So weird.
Weirdo.
Anyway, we've got a planeswalk out of Magic.
It's my turn.
Somewhere else, not paying any taxes on it. Your turn. Where are we going?
Oh, well, if we're not paying money, this is a bad place to go because there is a music festival coming up.
Oh, sure.
That I am.
That's the opposite of not paying money. It's paying quite a bit of money.
Quite a bit. The music festival is Good Things. Good Things Music Festival. It's in December.
Been around for a long time in Australia, right?
Yeah, it's not been around for ages, but it's a kind of big metal show, like lots of rock and roll, lots of kind of pop punky kind of bands and stuff. The upcoming Good Things this December has just an awesome lineup. I'm actually going to go very quickly onto Instagram and just read out some of the bands that are coming because one of them is a band that has played Good Things Festival before, and I, after the festival, realized I love them and I missed them playing at the last time they were here.
Are they coming back?
They are.
So you will be able to listen to them.
Electric Callboy. I think I've shown you these guys before. These guys are the one. They do like a really cool mix of EDM dance music, like proper like kind of thing, mixed with like hardcore metal, rah, 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 kind of scream stuff.
That's fun.
It's the sickest combination of music ever. But the headliners for this year are Korn and Sum 41. Also in this lineup is Bowling for Soup, a pop punk band from like the early 2000s.
It's a great name.
It's a great name. Also just a great like sound. They're very like Blink 182-y
sure.
kind of vibes.
Where are you?
That kind of accent. Yep, for sure. And also Sleeping with Sirens are also coming.
Ooh.
The Living End, North Lane, The Butterfly Effect. Oh my God, From Ashes to New are going as well? Oh my God.
You could be saying anything at this point. I have recognized 2 of these bands so far.
These are all like very like kind of niche bands, but I know for a fact a lot of you listeners love it because I've referenced bands, and in our Discord,
people have been like, I know In Heart's Wake.
Yeah, I know this band. Hey, when did you listen to this album? And we've had like full side tangent conversations. And there is also weirdly a huge crossover of metal and Magic players.
Yes.
Like one of the people we've just made friends with recently, a great guy called Jordan. I'm not sure if Jordan's listening to this. What's up if you are? Is in a great band called Starve. And I'm obsessed with their latest EP. It is sick.
I think I played with Jordan at CanCon.
You did.
Not CanCon, Command Fest.
Command Fest in Sydney.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
I played with Jordan and another member of the band, I think, who also plays.
Yes.
Is that right? I think 2 of them do. Yeah.
But anyway, I have been meaning to go see one of Jordan's shows for a while, and I've been DMing Jordan a little bit. He's going to try and get a streaming setup so he can come play some Commander with us on stream. But there's this weird intersection of like rock and metal music and Magic the Gathering. So much so that the other day I saw a TikTok. I think it was an Instagram reel, but it was in a mosh pit, right? They had opened up the pit. So that's where you like, everyone separates and you leave a big gap in the middle of the floor. Now, usually when this happens at a metal show, you either do a wall of death where everyone runs at each other or a circle pit where everyone runs in circles. Or like you just have people like properly crazy moshing.
Yeah.
You know what was happening in this pit?
What?
There was a group of Commander players playing Commander in the middle of a mosh pit at a metal show.
That's gold.
Jordan, if you are listening to this, I would personally like to play Magic with you on stage at the next Starve gig. I think that would be hilarious. Let's make it happen. I think that would be so funny.
Don't worry about the streaming setup. This is the only content we'd like to make with you.
Let's
disregard all previous instructions.
Next time you're playing Stay Gold, let's do it. Let's... Fuck, that'd be so much fun. That's like my dream night out. Like that is like a metal show and Commander.
The Venn diagram of James's interest will be a circle for that one and only day.
Circle.
A mosh circle, you might even say.
Wow.
Anyway, thank you. We'll end on that note. That's all we have time for. We'll see you next Friday for another transmission from the Space Commander.
Goodbye, Commander players. Go get therapy.